How good was it to have a full weekend of footy? Welcome back to the Casual Athlete with Longy, myself, and we got Biz here too. Today we're going to run through each game and the fantasy implications for your side and what you can take away from these games in terms of making your team a little bit better. Biz, I'm going to throw to you first here. Indigenous v NRL All Stars, massive game here. What was the fantasy standout for you?
I think, the first player I looked at was Hines next to Trindle. It was a good show into this year's Sharks halves partnership, with both of them going to be the 7 and 6 this year. And it was what we expected. Hines and Trindle shared the playmaking a lot more than Hines and Moylan. Hines didn't do too much, but still got away with 60 points, which is what you want to see. And Trindle won player of the match. He looked good. I think he's going to have a dominant role this year. He's really becoming a great half in his own right. And then on the other side, we had Joe Tarpanay with a huge 80-point performance. I think they were he was the big standout performer. And it just goes to show, if he got the minutes, he could be the best forward in the game for fantasy purposes. Longy, who caught your eye and what were the key kind of takeaways for you?
Yeah, look, I was looking at Xavier Willison. So 43 points in this game. He nearly had that try as well, which would have boosted his score even more. So I looked at him and thought, yeah, he looks like he's been in the gym in the offseason. He looks like he'll earn a bigger role. We look at Brisbane as well. We'll go through them, but there are some injuries to that forward pack. Pierre Kura, a bit iffy for round one. So, yeah, we could see Willison step into a big role from round one. I'm feeling like I could be confident in playing him in my 17 even.
Yeah, I agree. I think if he's there, I'm going to play him in my 17.
Very solid. And Jesse Arthurs, that's a guy that he didn't do himself any favors as well. So he's a bit of a slider for me. He wasn't in my team anyway, but there were people who had him in their center spots, as he might take that wing spot. So, yeah, I'd be hopping off him.
Yeah, and I think the last name to note here, the Cheese, pretty much same as last year, 55 minutes, 33 points. Didn't really show much more than what he gave us in 2023. I'll happily be skipping that one. But otherwise, pretty much what we expected. Latrell had good touches. All of the top guys had good touches. And, I think we can expect what we expect.
Absolutely. Let's roll into the next one here. Doggies v Storm. And this is one you probably didn't expect if you didn't look at the team lists. So the Dogs take out the Storm. First upset of the year. We've got our try scorers here. Skelton, Zeri. Some really interesting try scorers there. Obviously, Pappenhausen gets one in his game back as well. But let's roll down. So, interesting in terms of the stat leaders here too. Bronson Zeri, 161 run meters. Look, for him, that 42 fantasy points, it's not crazy, but it was a really good showing for him in terms of, I guess, his form and a chance to win back a spot. Does Bronson Zeri get onto your radar, Beers, or is he too expensive? What are you thinking here?
Look, I think he started the game pretty rusty, and you could see it for years off, but he came into his own pretty quickly, and I think his work rate, the 160 meters, is a positive sign. The fact is he's still full 50K. They were playing a Storm team without many of their first graders, so, was it really an upset, Longy? I don't think so. I would have expected the Dogs to win that comfortably. They just didn't, other than Pappenhausen, there was no real superstars for the Storm. So, bit of clickbait from us. I think we posted a photo of our Storm pretenders after that game, and it didn't go too well with the comments. But no, I wouldn't start with him. He's too expensive. I would have loved it if it's 350K. I would have maybe hopped on, but at 450, he's a pass from me. But a couple of the other guys in the back line that I really liked, Wilson, that step he put on to score his try, and then even Gerald Skelton, opposite Josh Adokar this year, they've got a couple of options. And as a fantasy player, I would love Skelton to that spot. He's big. He busts a lot of tackles. We were pretty high on him in our preseason coverage a couple of weeks back, but don't think he'll get the spot, but he's one to watch. But yeah, look, I think for me, out of the Dogs team, the key things for me were Sam Hughes. Now, he looked really good. I think he's kind of locked in a spot for round one based on what he put. He was one of the best out there. And he's got a pedigree in the reserves and pretty high PPM. I think he's pretty much close to a must-have after week one. And if I talk about the other guys, the halves, Hutchison and Sexton, this is a challenging one because Hutch looked pretty good. He was on track for a 45, 50-point performance, but then Sexton came on and he was one of the best on field. So even though I like Hutch for his fantasy role, I don't really know if he's going to get that spot. And if he does get that spot, how long he's going to hold on to it. But I don't know. What do you think watching that game?
I mean, I couldn't see Hutch winning out over Sexton. Surely the Dogs have gone, yeah, no, we bought Sexton in for that spot. I don't know. I think you've covered it pretty well for the Dogs. I think you got the main points nailed down there. Look, if Skelton never got a spot, I'd be all over that. It's the Storm side that's a bit interesting for me as well. So Pappenhausen looked really good. Look, you don't need to see that much from him. The fantasy score wasn't anything crazy. It was a 31 with a try and a try assist. But he was out there. He was looking sharp. That's all we need to see. In terms of the rest of the team, it's a pretty reserve grade heavy side. Jonah Pezzett looked a bit better than he had last year. He looked a bit stronger, more mature. So if he ever gets a run, he could be a guy to look at, especially if he gets a bench role to start the year. Loiero played at lock, which is great news for our guy Sean Bloor. So I look at that, I think, yep, look, as much as Sean Bloor wasn't in this game sort of showing out, that's a win for fantasy as well. And the rest of the team is, it's pretty reserve grade heavy.
Yeah, that's right. But I think Pappy showed enough in 40 minutes that he hasn't lost that athleticism and explosiveness that made him such a top-tier fullback, which is a surprise given the nature of his injuries. But I think he's pretty much firmed into must-have status. Like, he didn't do too much. He scored 31 points. He's a guy who's going to score many 70-plus scores this year when they're at full strength.
Guaranteed money, man. Now, this next game, this has a bit more implication in terms of fantasy. And look, we posted some clips to Instagram this week on this one. Your boy, Dylan Lucas. Now, I was not a believer on the Dylan Lucas hype train. I just thought it was a bit too dodgy in terms of his security for that position. But mate, he looked good on the weekend. Did you catch that game? And what do you think of his couple of tries and the performance in general?
Yeah, I think Dylan Lucas is firming for that edge spot over Kai Pearce-Paul. I think he's just one of those guys he just doesn't look like a threat, but he's just so intelligent. Like he runs a good line. He's the type of try-scoring edge that we've seen in the past who just keep getting it done. And those players, are just great for fantasy. I think not quite like a Preston style last year, but Lucas averaged 50 plus at the edge last year, playing 80 minutes, and this Knights team over the game looked like they were going to be pretty strong in attack. And I know they're close to a first grade team versus Sharks, who had a few first graders. But if this is signs, like, I'm pretty high on Dylan Lucas because you want those guys with high work rate. And Dylan Lucas, like, even though he's a try scoring guy, he also makes a lot of tackles for his position. I think there was a couple of games I think he averaged close to 45, 50 tackles last year. So he has the capability to be a 55, 60 guy. If he's named at edge, I'm pretty much locking him in because I really liked what I saw from him. But, yeah, I mean, what about the Sharks side? Did you see any key performers there, Longy?
And before we hop across, I liked Armstrong in this game. David Armstrong. I don't think he's going to get a spot, but on the wing there, he was super quick. Scored a couple of tries. One of them was pretty regulation, sort of off and offload. The other one, he showed a lot of pace to get to that ball. So yeah, I look at him and sort of go, oh, if you want to replace Dom Young's explosiveness, it's hard to do. But I thought he looked really good in that spot. Whereas Tuala and the other contenders, Jenkins was all right, but he was playing a bit of center as well. So that could be up for grabs more than we think it is. On the Sharks side, yeah, look, I didn't see too much here that surprised me. There were some good performances from some of the middle forwards. So guys like Hazleton and Colquhoun, they were both pretty good, but are they going to get the minutes? I don't really think so. Into the back row and all that. Look, there's a bit of talk that Teague Wilton could be dropped instead of Talakai for Billy Burns. I think it's kind of fantasy speak at this stage.
No chance. No chance.
Bit of chat whizzing around.
That disgusts me. Billy Burns. Teague Wilton is one of their best young players. There's no way he's being dropped for Billy Burns. Whoever came up with that rumor, come on, guys.
Look, everyone wants to find a thing everyone wants to find a cash cow in the Sharks team, and
is that the
maybe
Talakai
goes to the back row.
Billy Burns, really? Yeah, Talakai. Billy Burns. I honestly, that actually disgusts me. Dropping Teague Wilton for Billy Burns. If I see that, I'm done. I'm quitting fantasy.
Look, I've got a report on every bit of news we get. All right, but look, I guess the other thing I'd look at here is so Trindle. His injury, he picked up a bit of a niggle in that All Stars game. I doubt that he misses much time. That's what I'm hearing. He should be okay for round one. But who comes into that spot next to Nico Hines? Is it a Cade Dykes situation who played fullback in this game? That's what I'm hearing. would be the backup, but again, totally up in the air. That might be a cash cow for us too. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy to move on to the next game, the Chooks and the Seagulls.
Yeah, let's go. I'm ready for the next one too.
All right, so this one, Chookies named a full strength side. Manly named a basically reserve grade side, and they put up a great fight in this game. The Chooks backline was on fire. Look, a few things to note here. Dom Young, he picked up an injury in this game. Looks like he'll be fine for round 2. Looks like he'll miss the Las Vegas game, but that doesn't really affect too much fantasy. The fact that Dan Tupou had such a big game as well. We were talking a bit about Joe Soli'i and maybe him stealing one of those wing spots. I look at that and sort of go, all right, Dan Tupou scored a double and had like 8 tackle breaks. He's probably not going to get dropped. Joe Soli'i is probably going to be stuck at center. Might sneak onto the wing for that first game, but I think it's a little bit too long of a bow to draw for this one. Any standouts for you in this one? Did I know you've got your eye on May, for example? Did he shine the way you hoped?
Look, no, I think, to be honest, the key performer here was Teddy. And the reason for that is he had a strong game. He had, 50-odd points, 10 tackle busts, and he looks like he's going to start the year strong. And with the backline power they have, like the 200 run meters is always a plus. When Teddy's running 200 meters, that means so many attacking points, opportunities, right? Tackle breaks, offloads. With 1% or 2% ownership we spoke about, I'm kind of firming on him, and especially we'll get to the Raiders game next because like all the cashies there kind of underperform. But I'm kind of looking at Teddy and licking my lips a bit. Like having a guy like him as a pod is pretty interesting. But in terms of the forward pack, I mean the Roosters forward pack, there's just too many big names there. Like I couldn't touch any of them because they all looked all right. They all seem to be mid ranges this year. They want to steal each other's minutes, vulture each other's opportunities. Terrell May looked really good. He kind of ended the year with close to a 50 average in the last 4 or 5 games. But again, 46, like he's priced at 37, 38. You need a 50-plus average from him to be worth it. And he's probably not going to get the minutes. He's going to have up and down scores. But I think out of the Roosters team, Teddy is the only real name I'm looking at. The rest are just too risky for me.
I get asked about Sam Walker a lot. 45 points in this game. He looked pretty good in this game. Is it just too mid-rangey for you, or what do you think there?
Yeah, too mid-rangey just because I think, again, there's guys better than him that you can rely on, like Hines, Cleary, DC, Moses. Those guys are just going to be less, they're going to be more consistent, less lumpy scores. Whereas Sam Walker, he has to share with Keary. He's not as big as he's just not as stable in terms of the kick meters, but he's kicking goals and the Roosters should be good, but, I'll be passing on him.
Fair play. And then to the Seagulls, first things first, Tommy Talau in this game, 19 points. So I think that's a PB for him by about 15 points. So I'm pretty impressed by that one. Look, overall, looking through this Manly team,
yeah,
there's not
Talau
heaps to report home on. Look, Josh Schuster, he's iffy for round 1. That's not really out of this game, but Ben Trbojevic comes in. How many minutes did he play, actually? Burbo. What was he?
I don't think he played that many minutes, but even in the minutes that he did play, he looked a bit lackluster, to be honest. I just think if Burbo didn't have the same last name, I don't know what I mean, but he's not like I'd be like the fact that he's even in it. Like I know he scored a hat trick in the first week or one of the preseason, but the quality difference between him and Schuster is I know Schuster has his problems, but talent wise, it's night and day. And I think with Trbojevic, he's going to have big games, but he's going to have games where he scored. And like last year, you've seen him in the second row. Like he's going to have games where he's scoring 15, 20, which means he's not a really reliable center to start. Like I'll have him in my centers, but I wouldn't want to pair him with another sketchy center. So, we'll get to a center who's rising, but I didn't really like what I saw from Berber.
I'm with you there. People are asking about Nathan Brown as well. That's a steer clear. He's had chances over the last couple of years. It just doesn't feel like he's going to be that fantasy producer the way he was in his younger years. So skip on him as well.
Yeah,
look, it's pretty reserve grade heavy
also,
side.
There's not many minutes. Yeah, like with Nathan Brown, as good as he has been previously, like with Jake Trbojevic there and Paseka and all those guys, like just not going to happen.
Yep, that's it. Now, next game here, Para, who got up to a big lead against Canberra and then just fell away with 4 tries after the 55th minute. Look, a couple of noteworthy try scorers here. So KO Weeks grabs a try. Bailey Simonson as well, who we talked about a bit, grabs a try too. In terms of stat leaders, Brendan Hands leading tackle count. That's pretty nice to see. Tuolangi, 178 meters, which is interesting. And Morgan Harper had a pretty decent game as well. So first thing I'm going to throw to you here, Biz, Tuolangi, he cranks out 57 fantasy points. We dropped a question on Instagram asking who people thought were the impressive performances of the trials. A lot of people were saying Tuolangi. Now, does that pose a threat to Sean Lane, or is it a case of maybe Cartwright loses some minutes, or is he a middle forward? Like, what are you thinking here?
I don't really know, to be honest. Like, I wasn't expecting such a good performance from him. He's never really shown that high fantasy pedigree at Manly and the Tigers, but he had a really good game, probably one of the best on field, at least in the forward packs for the Eels. I don't think it impacts Lane. I mean, Lane is the captain of this trial team, and he's always been, over the last couple of years, like an 80-minute player week in, week out.
Mhm.
But the Eels are pretty stacked at the edge. Like, they've got Cardi, they've got Lane, they've got Tuolangi here. They've also got Hopgood, who filled in at second row at times last year. They've got Madison, who's a second row by nature, playing in the mids. It's a bit crowded, and it is kind of making me sour on Lane a bit, because even though he might get big minutes, that 80 minutes might turn into 60 minutes. So you can't do that. Like, if he's playing 60 minutes, you have to definitely pass on him. But in terms of Lane, he played about 30 minutes, scored about 18 points, a few tackle breaks. He looked good. If you extrapolate that to 80 minutes, it's a 48-point score. So that's exactly what you want from him. But I think, with Tuolangi playing this well, if he continues this next week, then I might have to steer clear of Lane.
Yeah, especially if some guys like Hosking, for example, can sneak into the starting side. It just becomes a tougher equation. I'll throw a few good ones in here. So Morgan Harper, Bailey Simonson, Sean Russell all looked pretty good for Parramatta in the back line, and Brandon Hands at hooker. For mine, I think, look, Simo, 47 points. He scored a try. I just think he is firming more and more as that guy at about 470K that you can put into center, that has really good fixtures to start the year. He plays on a very strong edge for Parramatta. He's pretty much locked into my team. And look, if you get on him, it's going to be a big pod. Basically, it's going to be me, maybe you, Biz, and probably about 100 other people who watch this who really believe in us that will jump on that. So I like him as that pod, because you're going to have to take a gamble on a center, and it's up to you who you choose. But the crash ball running, big meter eater in a strong Parramatta left edge with great fixtures to start the year, to me, that's a good equation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree. He looked good in a team that was beaten pretty comprehensively, especially in the second half, without any of their key attacking players. So he's 47. Even that try was not a big point try. They kind of just jumped into a bomb and put it down. So it wasn't like a 20-point try or anything. I think it was just good work rate. The thing is, is Harper going to steal a spot? Because Harper was actually decent as well, but I think that's Bailey's spot, to be honest. So yeah, I'm with you. Dual position as well. Good fixtures. There's not much. They've got Penrith week 2, but Eels actually generally pretty good against Penrith, and those Eels Penrith games are always high scoring for fantasy. If you remember back to last year, like every single person scored 70 plus in that Eels Panthers fixture early on. So look, will I have him at 470K? No, but if I had to spend for a center, 450 to 600K, I think Bailey would be my guy, because I agree with all your arguments. I definitely do. I think he's in for a breakout year where he can average 45 to 50 if the Eels go well. But in terms of Sean Russell, he looked good. He looked quick. He chased down Savage. But he's priced 370. He's a winger. Yeah, I'll pass on him. And then your last name you mentioned, Hands. Look, I actually think he played really well. He had great service. He was crafty. I still don't know who wins that. Like, I actually don't know where Lussick. Like, do you know where Lussick was for this game?
Just not in the squad. I think he's healthy. I don't think there's any problem there. Or maybe BA just wanted to carry one hooker and.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like, is it a case of Hands getting first crack, or is it a case of saving Lussick for the starters? So I don't actually know. So let's see. Yeah. I mean, again, I think whoever's there, is a must pick. But
pretty straightforward, right? Whichever one
it's
gets
pretty
it, you pick.
exactly.
But we don't have to guess.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Madison still had a couple of those bad missed tackles where he kind of tackles with his arms rather than his shoulders, and led to a try. But I think Madison, with the Eels back at forward, full strength, I think you can pass on him.
And then for the Raiders, look, heaps of cash cows, potential cash cows at least in this game. We've got some massive scores here. So Chevy Stewart, 9 points. We got our boy KO Weeks, 33 with the try. Ethan Strange cracks out 38. For mine, in terms of the eye test, I thought Strange looked pretty strong. He looked like a guy who he's going to break some tackles, score some cheap tries throughout the year. So if he gets a spot in the halves, which to me feels pretty balanced as far as a halves pairing with Fogarty, I'd love to see that. If they run Weeks and they go Strange at center, it's risky because Seb Chris comes back round 2. Overall, I sort of left this game thinking I'm really not sure where this goes.
Yeah, I don't really know where it goes either. Like, they both played decent. The thing with Strange is he 38 fantasy points, but in a dominant half kind of role. I look at the guys who are predicted to be cashies this year: Stewart, Cottridge, Weeks, Strange. I'm kind of disgusted by all of them, like fantasy wise. No, I'm not talking about them as players. Like, they're all great players in their own right? But starting any of them is you're going to get 9 points, 10 points here and there. I wouldn't be surprised if you get one of those weeks where they give you a -1, -2, or a 0. I don't love it. I think Stewart kind of, Chevy kind of showed that raw talent, but I don't know if he's ready for it. Like, he kind of looked like he was maybe a year away from first grade. I think Savage was pretty good, but if he gets the wing position, I'm not going there. I think if Savage is on fullback position, I'd pick him. But the thing is, both Rapana and Chris are coming back. So who even knows what happens in terms of starting positions? Yeah. I think just given their price, if Strange, Weeks, and Stewart are named, you have to start, or you have to have all 3. But am I comfortable with them in my 17? Probably not, to be honest, unless it's Savage at fullback, and I might give him a go. But it's not great.
Yeah, Weeks in particular, man, he's not a fantasy producer. Like, he'll have to play some very good footy to score anything. In this game, it's 24 run meters, 95 kick meters. Right.
Yeah,
so you look at that in 3 go.
Yeah.
It was about 18 tackles. So he had a good defensive work rate in this game, but he's not that guy for fantasy. I think Strange has a bit more upside. I think he could grow into a Jack White-esque kind of scorer, which is not 80. You're not going to keep him, but at base price at center, you can do worse.
I think Weeks reminds me of like Kane Elgie from a few years back. Just like no fantasy production. Is that even his first name? I can't remember. I just remember Elgie, but
that's a guy like that.
Yeah.
And then Danny Levi, last guy I want to talk about here. Look, obviously Tom Starling cranked out a pretty big score, 38 points. So Levi, it worked sort of the way I thought it might work, where Tom Starling would play that dominant hooker role. I don't think there's too much more to say, but Levi's probably a skip as well. Next game here, Rabbitohs and Dragons. And the Rabbitohs turned it up for this game, 28-6. Big win. Braden Burns snuck a couple of tries. Richie Kenner, Jacob Host. It's not telling us much for fantasy, that try scoring list.
I don't think there's many fantasy takeaways from this game other than don't rely on any attacking players from the Dragons. They had a full team and they didn't look like Lomax, Sloan, all these guys, Sully. A lot of people are hyping up Sully, like 41 average without injury affected games. Like, you really want a center at that price in this Dragons team? Like, if you want that smoke, go get that smoke. There's no way I'm touching that. No way. I don't care how talented you are. You're not cracking a high average playing in this team. But
there's 18 points for you. So does this scare you off Carl Flanagan at all? Because Lomax
the points weren't great. Yeah, I know. That was a surprise to me. It does kind of cool me off Flanagan, but I think at 350, I mean, if you scroll to the right of his stats, I think he did enough kicking and tackling that he could still be decent. I think, look, to be fair, Rabbits are one of the best teams in the league, even with their reserves. They still had a pretty strong team, especially forward pack. But that kind of 5 to 7 kicks to Ben Hunt is giving me a bit of faith. He'll get a bit of playmaking, but I'm definitely cooler on him. He's definitely one of my losers from the week, but I'll still have him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not touching him for draft leagues, anything like that. Still 350k starting half. You got to do it. Jacob Little is a guy I'm getting asked about a bit as well. For Jacob Little, I mean, the pathway to 80 minutes is there. I just don't want to do it. He's sort of had this pathway quite a few times in the past. It just never seems to eventuate.
He never gets it. Like, it's always there for him, but they never give it to him. When he does play 80, he's like a 50-point guy. He's one of the best attacking hookers, but I think they're pretty bullish on Miles. And I've also heard that Marshke could get a utility role. So,
yeah,
look, I don't love it. I think, and then Dylan Egan with 24 off the bench. I don't know how many minutes he gets in real life if he gets a spot, but at base price, he might be 230k, even below 250. So if he's there, I'll get him. But this whole Dragons team, man, like Jack DeBellin, I think he'll be good just based on he'll be tackling a lot. Let's put it that way. So he could be the only one on this team.
At risk. Like,
I agree.
You got to clear DeBellin. Eisenhuth started the back row in this game, which I don't feel like is going to be a long-term move for them, but they did try Murdoch Masilla last year, so maybe they like that sort of
journeyman type,
older player.
Yeah.
But Egan, even like I didn't see too much there that sort of blew me away. I mean, he could be a sort of Jackson Ford-esque performer, potentially for them. I don't know. I'm also not blown away by the Dragons. I mean, on the South Sydney side,
I think they need a guy like RFM.
Yes, they should be starting RFM, but
I
mean, so Kepi, right? Kepi had a good game in this game. Does this cool us off on a guy like Tola, for example? Like Kepi can easily play that 40-minute role.
Kepi's had the opportunities, but he hasn't really done it. I'm not huge on Kepi. I know he had a big game here, but they might just be giving him more minutes because it's a preseason game. Like Tola's their guy. They're big on him. He's been in the leadership group. He's been there for a long time. I can't take too much away from this game, other than it's Tallis Duncan didn't get a start, so I'm calling off him. And Jacob Host had a great game, but Cam Murray looked strong. But I think nothing's changed for me from the Rabbitohs lineup in terms of fantasy.
So it's not the year that Davey Moale steps up and finally
he's got a good drive. He's got a good drive, but nah, I think the guys are still Murray, Cook, Latrell. I think those guys will have good years because the Rabbits look strong.
All right, let's run to the next game here. Warriors and Tigers. This is a pretty fun game. So the Warriors came back and nearly stole this game. They were down 18-6. Got it back to 18-16. Look, Sione Fainu, he took an intercept in this game. That was pretty crafty. That's boosted his run meters up to 149, which is nice. Fantasy points, a couple of names that you probably haven't heard of. A couple of names you probably don't have to worry about, to be honest, for this fantasy season. For the Warriors, mate, look, we can have a look at the scores here, but who stood out for you in this one?
I think, look, from a football perspective, I love seeing Roger Tuivasa check back. Like, he didn't have a good fantasy game, and I think you can easily scratch him. Like, there's no way at center you can pick him up at his price. But how good was he? Like, just to see him running around again, a couple of great tackles, a couple of bone rattlers. But it was actually his center partner that struck out to me. All rumors are pointing towards Ali Latua. I hope I've said that right. Probably haven't. But he's firming up for a center spot, and he looked good. 35 points. He had a good showing at the end of last year too. I think he's 300K in fantasy. He'll easily be my starting center if he gets that spot. And Warriors are a good team. I think that's really the main takeaway from this team. I think the rest of the Warriors team is pretty settled. So, no, it's good to see the Warriors. I think everyone has a soft spot for the Warriors and RTS in particular. So keen to see him and Sean Johnson run around this year.
Okay, here's my question for you then. So obviously RTS, 600K, it's too much. In a draft league where you get to keep him for the whole year and where maybe he moves to fullback at some point and becomes that higher tier gun, do you reach for him a bit higher, or do you still sort of think it's too abstract?
I think it's too abstract. I think, CNK last year was one of their best. He showed all the elements of a top tier fullback in real life, not so much in fantasy. So I think they've been pretty clear that that's his spot. So look, I think you're just pretty much waiting on injury at that point. So I wouldn't do it, but I can see it happening because CNK does have concussion issues, etc. So there could be a prolonged period where RTS is the fullback, but otherwise I don't think on form he'll get it.
Easily. And then Chanel Harris-Tavita, I wasn't super impressed by him. A few kicks out in the full, looked a little clunky for mine. So I think Luke Metcalf is a good shout to keep that spot. He had a couple of nice support runs as well where he nearly got the ball and sort of broke away into space. So it could have been a much bigger day for Metcalf. Still not interested for fantasy in either of them really, but I think Metcalf will win that role. On the Tigers side of things, yeah, look, it was an interesting day. They sort of started strong and then really cooled off. The Warriors had a guy in the send off bin for 60 minutes as well, so it was a bit disappointing for them that they couldn't put on a few more points in this game. But yeah, I looked through and I think there's a couple of things to talk about here. Aiden Caesar, we weren't hot on him in general, but he's now lost the goal kicking to Coruscant as well. So Aiden Caesar is a hard avoid. Coruscant as a goal kicker, it's good enough that it's annoying me not to have him, but it's not good enough that I'm buying him. So
yeah,
I'm still
that's a good way to
iffy
put
on
it. Great way to put it.
Are you considering it? Like, obviously, we're still pretty fresh in terms of reactions, but are you looking at him now? Is it of interest?
I mean, you know, in a good team where the goal kicking could be 8 to 10 points potentially, yes, but in the Tigers, maybe like 4 to 6 points. And I mean, I still don't know if he plays 80 minutes. Like, does the goal kicking mean that he plays 80 minutes, or did they just give it to, say, a Caesar when he's off the field? If he's 80 minutes goal kicking, then yes. But like we've spoken about Talon and Jake Simpkin and
Talon
stuff.
was good,
I
man,
don't know.
in this game as well. Talon made a nice clean line break in the second half, just went straight through. So I think he's done enough to earn a spot. But they usually play Coruscant for 80 minutes when he goal kicks.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be an interesting one. I'll be keen to watch the next one. The fact is, he misses round one as well. So I think that makes it an easy decision. Like, if he played round one, I'd consider it more. But the buy, I think, pass for me. But it is interesting. He's a guy I could look to get early in the season if he's going back to his kind of 55, 60.
I'll throw it to you then. Draft league. Would you choose him over Robson?
Nah, I like Robson. I mean, we're both
Reed
pretty high
Money?
on Robson this year. Yeah, over Reed, yes.
Over Reed? Brendan Hands?
Over Hands, yeah, definitely.
All right, yeah. So you've got him in that sort of tier. All right,
yeah,
cool.
I've kind of just got him below Robson, but above Marnie. Probably at the JMK level kind of thing is where I have him.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, bit of injury prone.
We should do a rankings video. That would be pretty cool.
We can do rankings. Yeah, I've actually started putting mine together to set up draft leagues next week. So yeah, we can do that. Now I've got 5 minutes and we've got 2 teams to go. So we're going to power through these two. Cowboys and Broncos. This game was closer than it looks on this scoreline. So don't feel too bad if you're a Cowboys fan. They put up a pretty much a reserve grade side and they were contending this game up until sort of the second half. For the Cowboys, I mean, look, I'm going to blast for a few. Valame looked good in this game. He looked really good in this game. It doesn't change my view of him in fantasy, so I'm not really doing anything there. McKaylee, 61 points. There is a pathway to minutes there, which is kind of interesting. I want to see a bit more from him. The rest of the team, look, Finafuyaki, he's not going to get the minutes, I don't think. So I'm not going to move in on that, but just want to keep an eye on, especially if they lose Luciano, where he's one injury away from being that starting back rower. I'll throw it to you, man. So McKaylee, Fuyaki, any of these guys, do any of them sort of jump out at you as interesting for round one?
No. I think there's no one in the Cowboys team here I'm interested in. I think Cooley, like with Luciano gone, maybe he'll get 30, 40 minutes, but that's not enough for me. So yeah, I think Broncos were more interesting. They had a lot of first graders.
All right, give me your Broncos takes then. What are you thinking?
I think my Broncos take, geez, I was off Pierre Cora, but he is another kind of that try-scoring type. He might be inconsistent, but he's going to have games where he's going to get 80 plus when he's bagging a couple of like tries, running great lines of Reynolds and Walsh, etc. You just can't have him because you can't miss him, because if you don't have him and he has an 80-point game and he flies 70K, like, yeah, he's going to have 20-point games, 25-point games. But at 399K, I can't skip a guy who can score a double on any given week. So I acknowledge I was wrong there. If he's starting week one, he did pick up the injury. So he did pick up the injury. He's 50-50 for round one. So he's falling there. But if he's named round one and he's going to play, he'll be in my team. I was wrong. I am sorry.
Apparently, he was listening to the show and he saw you call him. What was it? Overhyped.
I
A
did not
fantasy
say that.
stinker. The Kane LG of back rowers. Is that what you said?
I call him the Tommy Talau off the edge.
No, look, I agree with you, man. He looked really good in this game. Some of his timing on the runs as well, like the footwork before getting the ball.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's obviously a very good football player. Defensive work rate is still not great, so he kind of scores like a center or like a winger almost in terms of his fantasy production. But yeah, he's red hot. Look, I wouldn't take anything from Payne Haas, 18 points, Carrigan, 29 points, any of that. It's a trial game. Don't worry about it. They looked pretty dominant. Going into the back line, yeah, like they took some time to gel, but the back line looked all right. Cobbo at center, people have asked about that. I'm not that interested there. There's just not a lot of value. He's priced at about 40 anyway. Dean Mariner, this doesn't really affect the way I see him. If he gets a starting spot, he's very interesting. Corey Oates, don't fall for that trap. Reece Walsh was really interesting here. So Walsh, he was on -2 after about half an hour. And so they cranked up a big performance.
He did that last year. I feel like he had many games last year where he was on 10 points with 10 minutes to go and ended up on 55. He loved ending games hot.
Yeah, mate, he's a good football player in real life. I still don't like him for fantasy because you're going to get a few of those -2 games that turn into -2 scores at some point, especially with tough fixtures they have. So, yeah, I think the Broncos are who we thought they were, and we got nothing to worry about there. Last game here is the Dolphins and the Titans, and look, Herbie Farnworth comes in. He scores a try for the Titans. Jack Bostock, who I know you want to talk about here as well, and Lemuelu, who's no longer available at center, so I don't want to talk about him at all. Is floating around there too. I'll throw it to you first, man. Jack Bostock, was there enough in this performance for you to think, yeah, maybe I could bring him in?
I mean, look, he looked good, but he's playing a Titans team. This was the most reserve grade team of this weekend. Titans really had no first graders, so it's even again he scored a try and 37 points. Yeah, he looks strong, but he's at that awkward 300k mark, which is not base price, and he's a winger on a not top tier team. So I think I'll skip. I think there's too many. If there's too many potential cashies at the wing center position, so. I think his partner, his center, Herbie Farnworth, looked really good. I think he's shown enough to be, again, the top 3 or 4 centers this year. But I think that, Titans aren't worth talking about because they're all reserve graders. But I think Dolphins were kind of as expected. It's kind of a shame that Ewan Aitken's not available in the centers because he looked pretty good on the edge and he scored decently. But, it's not, there's no real news coming. I mean, Jared Wallace, the 67. I don't know. Maybe he becomes the Payne Haas of this year. Who knows? Wallace
is good. He's always been good.
He's good.
He's an offload. He runs the ball hard. Look, I'll throw a few in here. Averillo is not the guy. I'm not basing it on this game. I'm more just saying in general. He's not a fantasy producer. Great football player in real life. Not a fantasy producer. Val Tavare won't get a starting spot. In my eyes, Tom Gilbert, don't read into this. He's going to be who we think he is. There's not a lot of value in it for fantasy, but there are a lot of people who like him, so don't let that sort of burn you off him. And Marshall King, I wouldn't worry too much about this. If he comes through the preseason fit, he's exactly who we saw last year, so don't stress that. Isaiah Katoa is one where there's a lot of raps on him, and I haven't sort of seen the performances to back the raps up. So part of me sort of watches him every now and then and sort of goes, all right, am I going to see the signs of that leap? Maybe it's a 3rd-year leap next year. Maybe it's a 2nd-year leap this year where he becomes that half that we've been told he is. And that could actually correlate to fantasy production. I saw nothing in this trial game to indicate that. It's more just sort of talking through, I guess, how we think about this and where we try to identify those opportunities.
Yeah, I got nothing more to add. I think you're right. Like, he's just not playing to that hype, but he's young. He's very young, and he can get there. And he could have one of those big jumps where he becomes like a secondary guy to a 50-50 share. He could have that kind of jump like Sam Walker did to a 45-50 guy, but I haven't seen anything yet. I'm just purely loving him because of the hype in his name. So
hype train. There you go, guys. Hype train heading into fantasy round 1. We're about a week and a half out. Biz, thanks for jumping on, mate. This is our review of all those trial games, all the fantasy implications. Let us know in the comments who you have traded in and out of your team. And no, we won't put timestamps on this one, but we'll see you on the next one.